The other part that I don't really like people doing is kind of downplaying their achievements in comparison to me. So people who say, oh, but I only did this and, that's not as amazing as what you did and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, stop. I always pull people up on that. And I was like, don't say only, don't say just, say I did and I'm amazing for doing this. And that's, that's probably, if people don't take anything else away from this except for that, like, please, please start using that in sentences.
Hi, and welcome to episode 7 of the One Life podcast. I'm your host, Devin Rodriguez, and our goal with this show is to enable and empower you to discover who you are so that you can take full advantage of the one life you have to live. Today's guest is the iconic and legendary Mel Urie, who is the only woman in history to complete the toughest race on earth, the Uberman. This consists of a 21-mile swim, 400-mile bike ride, and a 135-mile ultramarathon. So join us on this episode as she dives into not only her experiences, but the lessons she's learned. Without further ado, Mel Urie. Today's guest is Mel Urie. And I came across Mel as I listened to somebody else's podcast, Rich Roll, who is a super endurance athlete himself and has done really crazy things. And then I saw something that said Uberwoman. And I was like, what in the hell is that? So then Mel, I watched this, and not only did Mel complete something called an Uberwoman, Uberman, which she's going to get into, but she also did something called Epic 5, which is 5 Ironmans in 5 days on 5 Hawaiian islands. And that's when I first saw her on Rich Roll. And then it was again when she did Uberwoman. I was like, what did she do now? So Epic 5 was, think about an Ironman for those of you that are unaware, a 2 miles, correct me if I'm wrong here, Mel, 2-mile swim, 112-mile bike ride, and then a full marathon, correct?
Yeah, I think it's 2.4 miles, yeah.
2.4 miles, correct, right. Which 5 of those in 5 days, it blows my mind, and it's amazing. But then Mel, why don't you, because as I was telling you before, I cannot properly describe what you did next, and viewers be warned that what you're about to hear sounds a little sick, but it is amazing, and she is the first woman to ever complete this. So Mel, why don't you tell us a little bit about the Uberman and what it is, and a little bit about your experience.
Yes. Okay. So Uberman, Uberwoman, Uberman, I don't really get caught up in what it's called. So it's a 34-kilometer swim. So you swim from Catalina Island across to the mainland in California to Palos Verdes. And then you ride 640 kilometers through to the Badwater Basin in Death Valley. And then you do the Badwater Ultramarathon, which is, I know that one, 135 miles, or it's about 216 kilometers.
Right.
And
So Mel, let me just tell the audience what that equates to. So that's a 21-mile swim. What? 21-mile swim. Oh my goodness. Most people, Mel, don't even run 21 miles in their life at one time, but you swim it. Incredible. 400-mile bike ride. And correct me if I'm wrong, there was 20,000 feet of elevation gain in that bike ride. And then the Badwater 135-mile ultramarathon, which is said to be the world's toughest foot race. So you did 3 of the toughest things in the world at one time. I just wanted everyone to understand that as we continue to go forward. So sorry to cut you off, Mel, but I just wanted to put into perspective for my guests what we're actually talking about. So, and I can't even wrap my mind around it, Mel. It's crazy, but continue.
Oh, don't worry. Neither can I. I think back about it and I'm like, did I really do that? Was that me?
Amazing.
Yes. So I did that in October last year. So it's now June 2020. So that was, like 8 months ago now. And it was just absolutely incredible. I've been doing ultra racing, ultra triathlons, ultra runs for about 5 years now. So I feel like this was I did the first one 10 years ago. So I feel like this is a really amazing kind of opportunity to celebrate all of my endurance that I've been doing for that long. And I learned so much over the 5 years of ultra racing that, most things that we came up against were almost expected, and we already had a plan on how to deal with it. So that was pretty amazing. it's interesting because people ask me, why did you do this one? What was it
Right.
about that attracted you to it? And for me, I really wanted to do the Catalina Channel swim. That's been on my bucket list for quite some time, as well as the Badwater run. And so when I found an event that incorporated the two with a bike run in between, I was like, well, I feel like this is made for me. This race is just perfect. Even though they weren't like the official swim and run, I'm still going over the course. I'm still, like going through it. So yeah, it scared the hell out of me, to be honest, and it also excited me, and that's my two criteria that I use if I'm picking races. That it has to be something that makes me get little butterflies in my stomach and go, I want to do that.
So then, Mel, I just, and also this took you almost 6 days, correct?
Correct. 5 hours, 15 hours. And
Right. I really like what you said there, that it scared you a little bit, but it also made you really, really excited. And then you took the risk and you did it. Prior to starting it, was there any level of, and I would almost assume that there had to be a level of not uncertainty, because like you said, you prepared for it, I'm sure, logistically. And also, this was unsupported, correct?
I had a support crew with me.
Okay.
So through the swim, you always have to have a paddler and a boat. That's prerequisites because, there's sharks in the water.
Now, so Mel, you swam in the Pacific at night, if I remember correctly, listening to the podcast.
Yes, I did. Yeah, the swim started at about 10 o'clock at night. I jumped in the water. So it was pitch black, and it took me just under 12 hours to do the swim. So I swam through and finished the next morning when the sun was up, which was pretty magical, swimming through the night and into sunrise and during the day. That was pretty amazing. I think that was probably one of the most fun things I've done in terms of swimming through the night. I've never done that before, and I was really, really keen on that. I was really looking forward to that. So,
now, Mel, you weren't just swimming through a pool. You were swimming through the Pacific Ocean. Yes. I mean, but I think I heard, luckily, you did not have any encounters with any sharks. No. So was it just smooth the whole time, or how was it as far as the wildlife is concerned? Because I think that's another unknown and uncertainty, which would, I don't know, maybe scare me a little bit, but.
So, I mean, I grew up in Australia, so as you can probably tell by my accent, all of our wildlife is trying to kill you in one way or the other. So I feel like I've got an advantage that I don't really scare easily by animals, except for bears, because they're not native to Australia. So I get scared by bears. But for me, the idea about sharks in the water and being scared of sharks, I look at the situation and I say, okay, what's the risk of me actually being bitten by a shark right now? Like, I have however many people. I had, 2 support crew, a cameraman, and all of the boat people. I think there was 3 of them on the boat, plus my paddler, all looking directly at me for the whole swim. So I knew that if anything was going to happen, then they would know about it before I did, and they'd be able to intervene and do something before a shark come anywhere near me or anything like that. So I actually didn't even think about that or really worry about that, because I'm like, well, I'm safe because I've got all these people around me who are taking care of me. So that was totally fine. The main interaction that I had with wildlife was when, I think it was, I don't know, maybe like 2 o'clock in the morning or something. There was these really big white, like, rectangle things that were just all over through the water. I still don't know what they are. I really need to look it up. But it was crazy. Like, I suddenly just came across them and I swam through them for a good hour or 2.
Wow.
And every so often I'd hit one with my hand or one had hit me in the face. It was so bizarre. But because the light from the boat was illuminating them as well. So it was actually really quite beautiful to be swimming through that. That was really magical. I've never had that experience before. And then, there was a bunch of fish when I first started, but that was kind of it, because, I mean, the Pacific is so deep, you couldn't see the bottom at all, the whole swim. And, because it was pitch black, if anything was around, I probably wouldn't see it anyway, unless it was right in front of me.
Now, Mel, I'm definitely going to touch back on the swim and the bike and the run. So I think all 3 probably taught you a lot of different things. But can you tell from my audience, because we were talking a little bit about this prior, about your background prior to, Uberman, Epic 5, and that you're not necessarily the most gifted athlete of all time. So if you could just share for us a little bit about your story growing up and who Mel was.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in a very, very small country town. There no shops around. So you had to, drive probably about 10 minutes one way or the other to get to a general store to actually, purchase anything. So, and my school that I went to, we had to catch a bus and it was about 45 minutes away. So I, didn't grow up, in a big kind of athletic environment. I did swim a lot when I was a kid. My mum was a swim teacher, so she was really, really keen on having us learn to swim quite young. And, growing up in Australia as well, it's something that we all pretty much do. We're all thrown in pools as soon as we can walk and talk. And I played a little bit of team sports. I played some basketball and some netball and things, but nothing super serious, nothing competitive, just, local with school friends and things, on a Friday night down at the local high school. I also rode my bike a bit with my dad and my brother. We did a couple of bike events, multiple day events. There's a ride called the Great Victorian Bike Ride that I did a couple of times when I was about 15, 16 with them, but nothing serious, just, a bit here and there. Sport wasn't a really massive part of my life. So yeah, it's funny. People look at me now and they're like, "Whoa, I could never do that. You must be so fit your whole life." And I'm like, "Well, no, actually, I started to incorporate sport a lot more into my life when I started working full time after I finished my uni degree, and that was about 15 years ago. So it was at that time that I said to myself, okay, it's time to get fit. I put on a bit of weight through uni. I hadn't really been focusing that much on my health, so there was nothing significantly wrong, but I was at a point where I was like, well, I'm not really happy with how I look, how I feel, so I want to do something about this. And so then I started swimming more, and I started riding my bike a bit more, and then I discovered triathlon by going and watching a friend do one, and I went, that looks really fun, I want to be a part of that. And that was at the point when I started running as well, because I hadn't really hadn't run previously. I always thought it was a bit ridiculous, so I didn't understand why people ran.
But really, prior to that, you really didn't have much running experience whatsoever.
No, none. Like in high school, we had to do a cross country, and in my final year of school, I decided to team up with another friend and do it as a 3-legged race because we're just doing it for a bit of fun.
Right. Wow, that's amazing. So I think that, okay, so then you start, and now how was it starting off? Were you able to go out and run 10 miles at one time? Or how was it, that experience from not running at all to then going to do triathlons, et cetera? But, like I said, what was it that initial time that you started to begin to run? Because I think that's interesting.
I do remember one of the first runs that I did was with one of my friends, and it was around a park that I don't know how many laps I've done around there now, in Melbourne where I live now. And it's flat track. We did one lap, which is just under 4 kilometers, I think, just over 3K, something like that. And we did one lap, and she said to me, she's like, "How are you feeling?" And I'm like, "Oh, I feel okay." So she's like, "Do you want to do another lap?" And I'm like, "Okay, yep, no worries." So, we did that. And so I think one of my very first runs was about 6 kilometers, but I signed up, my very first running race was a 4K race on Mother's Day. There's a traditional run that we do that they have every year in Melbourne for Mother's Day. So that's a hilly course called the Tan. Anyone who lives in Melbourne knows the Tan very, very well. It's a very famous area of people who go for a run. And I remember doing the 4K and then looking at all the people that were signed up and doing the 8K run. And I thought, that is absolutely ridiculous. Why would you want to run that far? That is crazy, I still remember thinking that, and still remember saying that to my mum at the time, just going, why would you do that? That's
right.
I know, look where I am now. And then, so I found as I progressed through doing triathlons, I started doing quite small distance races, and then I did sprint distance, and I did Olympic distance. And I found that longer the races were, the more I enjoyed them. So I decided that I'd sign up for a half marathon, because I'd look at my times and go, pretty okay in the swim, okay in the bike, and then the run, I'd always be, quite low down in my age group overall. And I had to have everybody pass me because, I hadn't focused on it. It wasn't something that I was, fast at or anything. So I signed up for a half marathon and got through that. And the same friend who who got me into triathlon, and I did one of my first runs with. She came out and met me on course and ran the last part of it with me, and it was amazing, and I had so much fun. And then something clicked in me and was like, yeah, longer the better. This is where you need to be. This is really, really cool.
Right, Mel. I think it's interesting how you said that you were at a point where you run 3K, and then it was like, who the hell would run 8K? But that didn't scare you from then going out and then trying something. So I'm curious as to this, because I think we've all been there at some point in our life, but what advice would you give to someone who is either afraid to start or afraid to do something bigger because they might fail? Because I think that something like Uberman, you were definitely going, like I said, there's a lot of, you knew you were going to go out and do it, but a lot of uncertainty as well. So what do you tell somebody that either, for in your instance, is going to start exercising, but that's not their past, so there's that uncertainty again? What advice would you give someone when that uncertainty not only exists but sometimes persists in us? I really think.
Yeah, so I always think, I've been asked this quite a few times about, people who are new to exercise and what do you do, how do you start? And for me, the biggest thing that I would say would be, don't aim for perfection, because you're guaranteed to fail. Because people who don't have exercise as part of their normal daily routine, it takes a while to build that in. So if you're saying to yourself, if I don't get up every morning, 5:30 a.m., go to the gym, go for a run, get on my bike, whatever your form of exercise that you're planning on doing, if you're not doing that, then you fail, and then what's the point? And, then you're reinforcing to yourself that, no, I can't actually do this, and this is not for me. So that's probably my number one thing that I like to really stress with people. Like, if you just, take a day off for whatever reason, you've aimed to exercise every day, even though you have come from absolutely nothing, and, that's, potentially might be unrealistic based on what your lifestyle's like. People have work, kids, other stress in their life, other different demands. So I would say be realistic. And if you take a day off, forgive yourself for that, and then start again the next day. I think that's really, really important. My other biggest thing would be to, I know it's the hardest thing is just to start, and try and figure out what the motivation is on why you want to be doing it. And do you need like an accountability partner, or, somebody else in this? Do you need a friend that you're going to go and meet somewhere to go for a walk with them? And that you've made this commitment, so you can't like let them down, or, you can't cancel on them. Or, if you don't have somebody in your immediate vicinity that you're able to do that with, can you get that accountability from someone else? Can you tell somebody, this is what I'm going to be doing, and I need you to pull me up on it and tell me, just get out the door if I'm starting to, procrastinate and start to be like, oh, do I really want to? And, start asking the questions. I find one of the biggest things that is a significant strength for me is that I don't allow myself time to make decisions. I already pre-make decisions. So what I mean by that is, especially first thing in the morning, if your alarm goes off, you lie in bed for an extra 5-10 minutes, and then you start asking yourself the question, do I really want to get out of bed? It's cold, it's winter, it's not an attractive, thing to think about. I don't let myself that time of lying in bed. My alarm goes off, I get up straight away, I get changed, I'm downstairs, and then, I'm starting to do, whatever I need to do, and then getting out the door as quickly as I can, because I've already made the decision that that's what I'm going to do. I'm not giving myself the time to ask questions. Do I really want to? Because of course the answer is going to be, I want to stay in bed. I mean, who wouldn't? Right. It's minus whatever degrees outside. It's cold. So if you can find a way to almost like pre-decide that that's what's going to happen, and then, make sure you hold yourself to that, and understand that it's not going to feel amazing straight away. Like, I remember every time I come back after doing a really big race, I'll take 4-6 weeks where, I'm not really doing anything, at least generally a month, I don't do any form of exercise after a massive race, because I just need to give myself that, physical, mental break from everything. I know I'm going to feel like absolute crap for about 4 to 6 weeks coming back into training. but that's okay, because I'll get through that and then it'll be okay. And then I'll start to feel good again and start to get that endorphin hit back again. So it's not having unrealistic expectations about, you'll go for a run and then, suddenly you'll feel amazing and you'll be on this runner's high that everybody talks about. It's like, it'll take time, but give yourself permission for that. And it's okay.
Right. The second point that I think you made was really, and it's profound in my own life, is I feel like when you said you kind of pre-make decisions, essentially you take the emotions out of it. Because I feel like the moment for me, for example, the hardest part, and I share this with a lot of people, going out and exercising, is just getting out the door. But once I'm outside of the door, I'm not going to turn back. I'm not going to come back and go back inside that door until I'm finished with whatever I put my mind to. But the biggest thing, and I think so many people can relate to it, is just getting out the door in the first place. Like I said, once you're out the door, you're never going to turn back until you accomplished whatever you wanted to accomplish. And I think that's such a really good lesson that you've learned. And did you learn that over time, or how did you come to that realization?
Yeah, I think because of the type of racing that I do and the type of distances that I'm doing, I don't have the luxury of moving my training sessions around. Like if I don't do it at that particular time, it's not going to get done. Like I work full time, I'm training full time. It's like juggling 2 full-time jobs when it's, really, really intense. So it's something that I've just kind of worked in over time for myself. So I've created these positive habits in my life to make sure that training gets done. So, every night I'll look at my program and go, okay, what am I doing tomorrow? And make sure I get the relevant, clothes or whatever out for whatever sport that I'm doing the next day. If I'm going for a run, to the pool, whatever I'm going to do. So then again, I don't have to make decisions about what I'm going to wear, where my clothes are, trying to hunt around in the dark, wake up my husband. It's, it's not ideal. And then, yeah, I think just over time, I've just slowly learnt and refined these things. And the amount of times I've lost count that, I'll be halfway down the street and, start to run and then actually physically wake up and be like,
that's hysterical.
I'm running. Oh, right. Okay, so this is what we're doing. But that's it's just the way that it is. Yeah. So I was saying the other day to some people I was talking to that I pick up a lot of things from a lot of different people. Like I just listen, be open to what people are saying. It doesn't matter what walk of life you're from, doesn't matter what position in life you hold. Like I always go with the attitude of everybody can teach me something. So I'm open to it. And sometimes somebody might say something just completely offhand, not even be able to remember what they've said, but that resonates with me. And so then I take that on and then start to incorporate that in my own life. So I feel like I've kind of adjusted and molded things over time that then suits me to be able to, help with me being successful.
Yeah, I think that's interesting as well, because I tell people, and this is not my own quote by any means, I think I might have heard it from Tony Robbins, but success leaves clues. Like you were saying, you pick up a lot of different things from a lot of different people. And I feel like sometimes, even in like college or university, for example, to be successful, you could look at a student that's already doing it and kind of model a little bit about a little of what they're doing as well. And then of course, incorporate your own individuality and so forth. But regardless if it's school or like in the military, for example, or something like that, finding those mentors or people that you can seek out to really give you that advice. In your process of becoming the athlete you are today, were there people along the road that kind of were that light for you and showed you the way?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of my previous coach that before now, he sadly passed away a couple of years ago, Craig Percival, but he was amazing. Like I really looked up to him. I thought, he was absolutely incredible. He was the first person to do 8 Ironmans in 8 states of Australia in 8 days. And that was just absolutely incredible. I was there when he finished in Melbourne, and it was amazing to watch. And he was the most selfless man that I've ever met. So I really, really looked up to him. But also I found, other people that, I look to. So Hilary Biscay was the first woman that I was aware of when she was doing Ultraman Hawaii. So I really followed her quite closely and, followed what she was doing and when she was racing and, different things that, she was doing in the race. And I look at them like, well, she won and she wears bathers on the swim and then gets fully changed into a bike kit. So I was like, well, if it's good enough for her, that's good enough for me. So,
Right.
different things like that. So, I looked to her, and then my current coach as well, Kate Bevilacqua, like she won Ultra Canada and she won overall. So she beat all the men and women in the field. So she's pretty incredible. Yeah. She's absolute badass. And she's also won Ultraman Hawaii. So there's quite a few people, and even I look to other people that I know closely. So I've got a really good friend, this woman that I know, Brenda, who she has a charity, Channel for Change, and she swam the Catalina Channel a couple of weeks before I did. So I was onto her. I was like, right, tell me all this,
Right.
tell me all the information. Like she's from the English Channel. She's done a bunch of things. So I kind of look for people who have done incredible things and go, okay, so how were you successful and what can I do to incorporate? I mean, my list could go on. Like,
Of
I
course,
did
that's
epic time. So
such a valuable lesson for us all, though, I think, just to
yeah,
seek those people out in the first place.
yeah.
And chances are that person probably exists. But another point that you said is crazy. Correct me if I'm wrong, and I don't know if you did this while preparing for the Uberman, but were you still working full-time preparing for the Uberman?
Yes.
So run me through that, because here you are preparing for, I don't even know the correct way to put it. You were preparing for this what people dub as the single hardest endurance event of all time, yet you still have a full-time job. How were you balancing this, and what was training looking like for you? Because that's insane.
So yeah, balance is a very interesting word to use. I
Yeah.
don't feel like there's a lot of balance when you're training for such an event. It's all in of training and then work, and then there's a little bit of time at home and sleep and eat, and then that's kind of it. Like it's very much swung on the extreme level at that time. So my biggest training weeks, let me think, was probably about just under 30 hours that I did. So there was one week when I did a 100K run as part of my training, and then the following week after that, I backed up with a 20-hour training week. So there's a lot of just training under fatigue. So every day, generally, I would be training twice a day. There'd maybe be one day a week that I only trained once. So it'd be probably about an hour and a half, 2 hours in the morning before work, and then about the same each night as well. So I'd average maybe like 2.5, 3 hours every day. And then on my days off, then I would be training for generally about 7-8 hours. And there'll be back-to-back days. A lot of bike riding in those days, and some runs, but I did a lot of fun runs. So I did a lot of 50K runs. I did 5 of them. I did a 60K run and 100K. So that was kind of really how a lot of my run training came in. I was doing a lot of different events, because these are all events that I'd put on the thought about putting on the calendar for a long time, but the timing never worked out. So this time,
Right.
during the year, I was like, right, let's do all these races, and then I can get my training through that way as well. So that was really fun. That was really, really, really cool to do. To be honest, like, I wasn't really a very functioning person during the training outside of work, because I'd use up all my brain power at work. When you're training that much, you're just so fatigued all the time. Thankfully, my work colleagues weren't able to really notice what was going on, and I always found that if I made sure I kept eating throughout the day, then my brain would have enough calories, enough nutrients to still function. But then, thankfully, I'm able to sleep incredibly well, because I would just, pass out in bed, by about 8:30 every night, and then be up at, 4 to 5 o'clock every morning to get back at it again. But I guess because I'm so motivated to keep going and, reach the goal. And in my mind, if I'm not doing the training, I'm not going to be successful at the event. So there's no other option. You just have to do it.
Right. I think,
and, yeah, financially, I could not work full time. So yeah,
right,
I didn't have any.
right. So that's also really intriguing, because a lot of us, time is a big excuse that a lot of people utilize. And when preparing for this, like you said, you're doing 20-hour, 30-hour weeks of serious exercise. And did you feel like this? Because I would assume you did. If you missed one day, then that seriously jeopardized your chances of being successful at whatever you were going to do. Or did you have a different mindset? Or what did you listen to your body maybe? Or what was it like during that experience?
Yeah, so I had to miss a couple of days over 2 different times because I was sick.
Okay.
And yeah, so, I just, picked up a head cold or something, or, like a chest infection that meant that I couldn't train during that period of time. I am really, really, I'm really bad at knowing when to stop. That is definitely one of the downfalls of being incredibly mentally tough, is that you at the other end where you actually probably should stop and rest. I don't really understand where that line is. So yeah, it kind of gets to a point where my coach needs to tell me, yes, it's okay to stop, and then I won't feel guilty about it.
Right.
So yeah, I do still struggle with that. But I know that missing a day here and there, because I'm sick or, whatever's going on, is not going to affect the overall result. I know that the accumulation and the consistency of all the training that I've done for, however many months leading up to that particular event, or leading up to Uberman or Epic 5 or whatever I'm doing, it's not going to have a negative outcome on the overall thing. Like if I'm starting to miss 1, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, then that's going to have a significant effect. But missing 1 or 2 days here and there, like it's okay. Yeah, obviously you need a break. If your body's starting to break down and get sick, then that's, you've pushed it a bit too far at that point in time.
Right. Of course. Yeah. And I think that's a good point about the accumulation of your training. But you never, was there ever a day you took a point off just because you didn't want to go out and train?
No.
Right. Because once again, I think it goes back, you just took the emotion out of it. You said, I have no other choice but to go out there and train. All right. So we covered a lot about the preparation aspect. So you jump in the water at Catalina. Now run me through a little of your swim experience. A couple of different things come to my mind. 11, almost 12 hours of swimming. Did you sleep? Not only that, was your body fatigued? Like how was your body during that experience? And then also, what kind of impact did it have mentally on you? Because I do not really swim, Mel, okay? I've never swam for probably more than 20 minutes in my life. Yeah. So run me through a little of those 3 aspects a little bit, because I think that is, for me, it blows my mind away.
Yes. So the first 20 kilometers of the swim was really easy. It was actually quite interesting. I had a really nice current behind me. I purposely, because the race was so long, didn't push any of the 3 disciplines. I wasn't like, okay, let's, race through this or whatever. Like there was no racing whatsoever. It was just about, let's try and conserve as much energy as possible until you get to the run. So the first 20 Ks, I felt like I was just rolling my arms over in the water and not really putting in that much effort. Within the first hour or so, I started to feel quite cold, even though I had a wetsuit on, I had a swim cap on. But I was starting to feel quite cold, and we had bought a bunch of thermoses to bring some warm water if I needed that, but we'd left them all behind, so I didn't have any. So then we had to be a little bit creative, and ended up filling up some water bottles with some warm water, and I just tip it down my wetsuit because it, wasn't water that I could drink at that point in time, because we were going to make, hot teas and things like that. And then I was like, okay, that's still not working. And so for me, it's always like, okay, if I have an issue, start problem solving, start thinking about things. What else can I do? What else can I do? Don't get panicky about it. Don't get stressed about it, because that's a waste of energy. So then I ended up putting on an extra swim cap, because I know that always helps me when I'm swimming in cold water. And then that was fine. Like the rest of the swim, I was okay. Like, just regularly tipping warm water down my front, and that was fine. And then after about 20 kilometers, the tides changed and it started to get quite rough and start to really like push against me a lot more. So then I had to put in a lot more effort to swim the last 14. In terms of mentally, I didn't sleep at all. I didn't get on the boat, didn't sleep. I tried to have micro sleep. So at about 5 o'clock in the morning is generally around my witching hour where I start to really start to fatigue and start to feel, really, really tired. When I used to work night shifts, I'd always start to struggle around 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. And I just kept saying to myself, I just need the sun to come up, because I knew that it'd rejuvenate me, that it'd, make me feel a lot better. And so what I do is in between strokes when my face is in the water, I just shut my eyes for, like 1 or 2 seconds and try to have a little micro sleeps as much as I could, just to try and trick my body into saying, it's okay, you're getting some rest, which didn't work at all. It's ridiculous. The other thing that happened was the wetsuit tore shreds off the back of my neck. So I had some tape on it, and that lasted about 10 Ks, and then that ended up all just scrunching up into a ball. So I took it off, and then I had like no anything to protect my neck, and so yeah, that got completely destroyed. And I think I've still actually got a bit of red mark on my neck from the scars from it.
So then, Mel, what was it like looking out into the abyss, not seeing any land, and knowing that you're not going to see land for at least another 11 hours, like you said? Did that play any mental games with you? Because like I think you said on the Rich Roll podcast, it was like you kept making these strokes, but like didn't seem like you were getting any closer at certain points. So what was that like to have that experience of, I'm going for 4 hours now and there's still nothing around me?
So it was fine until the last couple of hours of the swim. So I'd spoken to a guy that I'd met, and he said to me, because he does a lot of paddling for the crossing, he said in the last quarter, I think it was the last third of the swim, don't look towards the shore. And I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, no worries. That's the, and of course I looked up, why wouldn't you? But the thing that I was talking to Rich about is that because it was daylight by that point, and it's very deceptive on where you are to how long it's going to take to get to shore. Because both my paddler and I looked at that and went, I'm actually not that far away. And, in my mind, I'm like, probably another hour of swimming, and then, I'll be fine, I'll be in. And it ended up taking double that amount of time. It ended up taking me 2 hours to get into shore. And that was when it was really playing on my mind, because that's when I was like, I'm tired. I just want to go have a sleep, because we'd planned always to have a sleep in the RV that we had as our crew vehicle out of the swim. So I was just like, I'm done. Like I sometimes get to a certain point where I'm like, I'm just done. I just want this bit to be over, and then I can go and, onto the next bit. So yeah, mentally that was definitely a bit of a push. And I find that I end up swimming kind of more strong strokes at that time, because I'm just wanting to get through it and just wanting to get it done, basically. And that becomes my motto that I'm chanting in my head at the time, like, just get it done. And then, eventually you get into the cove, and then, get into the beach. But yeah.
So then once you reached shore, how was your body, and how was the mental fatigue as well?
It was actually really good. So because my husband was on my crew, and he said to me later, he thought that I was going to be a lot more mentally, out of it, and, not necessarily be able to communicate properly. But I remember, because where you land on the beach, there's a lot of really, really big rocks. So you have to be incredibly careful coming in that you don't get pushed into one of them by the waves as they come into shore. And so I remember saying to them, I'm like, because, they were on the beach to help me get out of the water. And I said, look, I've been lying down for 12 hours. Don't rush me. And they're like, oh, okay, yeah, no worries. No. And I'm like, let's just take the time to get up to the beach. So mentally I was actually pretty good. I was really excited to be finished. I was really excited with the time that I'd done. So that was the fastest. I've got the swim course record now, so I'm pretty stoked at that.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was just really, really happy to have that section done as well.
Right. So then when you got back to shore, what were the immediate actions that you took? Did you eat? Did you sleep? Obviously probably you changed, I would assume. Like I'm not a triathlete, so I don't really know how it works with changing from wetsuit into bike gear. But what were the steps that you took once you reached shore?
Once I reached shore, I went and sat down. So there was there's these really big oversized chairs down at the beach because it's at the bottom of a really nice resort. So I went and sat down for a couple of minutes, and there were some ladies there who were, wanting to have a bit of a chat with me and ask me where I'd swum from and what was going on. And, so I had a bit of a talk with them. And so that was quite lovely. So I spoke with them. And then walked, because there was maybe like half a kilometre walk up to the RV, and I stopped and, had a bit of a rinse off, took my wetsuit off, and then walked up in my bathers, I'm pretty sure. And then got changed into I had my pajamas, so I got changed in my pajamas, had something to eat, and then lay down and had a sleep for a couple of hours. And then my husband woke me up after about 2 hours because we were quite conscious of the time, because I was riding through LA at that point, and we didn't want to get stuck in traffic, and we didn't want the crew vehicle also to get stuck in traffic. Right. So I didn't want to leave riding for too long. So I had 2 hours sleep. He got me up. I had something else to eat, and then got on my bike and started riding.
How'd you feel? Were you still tired when you woke up? Because I think something that you said on Rich, and I know that we were talking about the Iron Cowboy, for example, James Lawrence. He said, as those 50 days that he did the 50 triathlons and 50 Ironmans in 50 states, the second half of his 50 days, he actually did the fastest, because it was like, okay, my body's here. I'm in this position now. Now it's just the routine of let's go. Now I have no other choice but to keep going. And it wasn't as bad the second half, surprisingly, which to me is like counterintuitive in a way. But it seems to be that's the way it is. Do you have any experience with that? Like the longer you went on, like the sleep deprivation was easier to handle, or was it harder to handle? What was your experience?
So on the bike, I wasn't feeling tired at all. I'm quite fortunate that I can nap and then feel really refreshed. Even like on Epic 5, I was having like 15-minute naps on the last day to get through, and I wasn't feeling tired when I woke up. Like I actually feel quite refreshed after that.
God bless.
So I know. I'm so fortunate. So like 2 hours sleep was totally fine for me. Throughout the definitely into the run, I was a lot more fatigued in the run portion, and that was when I was starting to hallucinate. That's when my body started to go all wonky and do all kind of crazy things. So my legs would start to suddenly sidestep out of nowhere, or I'd start almost like swinging my legs, not being directly underneath me. They'd kind of like curve around on the sides when I was walking and running. So that was very odd. I've never experienced that before. So I find even with, sleeps and things, I definitely don't get faster.
Right.
But I think, maybe if I went for 50 days, I might get faster as I went along, but I have not experienced that.
Wow. I think that's crazy. We're definitely going to get there, but I want to go to the bike ride a little bit. So now you hop on your bike, and now how long did the bike ride take you to complete?
Just over 2 days. I think it was, I'd have to look at my times. It was 52, 54 hours.
Right. But just over 2 days. Okay. So what was that experience like, being, not necessarily being on a bike the whole time? Cause like you mentioned, you had to sleep, recover, do what you had to do. But what was that like to not only bike ride for 2 days, but also that massive elevation gain that you had to deal with? Was this like a really strong part of your race, or how would you describe your experience in the 400-mile bike ride?
Yeah. So again, like I wasn't pushing the time. I wasn't, I had, time goals roughly in my mind, but it was always just, if I did that, that'd be awesome. But if not, I don't really care. Like it wasn't like I at no point in this race did I feel like I was actually racing. I felt the way I was describing it to myself is I was moving through the course as fast as I could, with minimal breaks as possible. But I would say my bike riding was more, I was just cruising. I was just, pedaling as softly as I could to, again, try and conserve as much energy as possible for the run, because for me, it's always about energy management for the run. I found getting through LA, I always knew that was going to be tough and that was going to be stressful, because I'm not used to riding on the opposite side of the road. And, I didn't know what the traffic was going to be like. I'm not experienced riding over in America and, in a big city like that, and knowing how people are going to respond to cyclists. You hear about, because in Australia, I'm quite used to, how people are going to respond, and I ride quite defensively because of that. But it was kind of very much an unknown. So once I was out of the city, I felt a lot more relaxed, and I felt, a lot more chilled about the whole thing. Thankfully, I had a friend who had driven down from Canada in his car. So when it got to nighttime, I said to him that if he could follow behind me, or, someone driving his car, so I didn't feel ever that I was alone at nighttime, because that was always, that's just always a big fear of mine of,
right.
Alone in the middle of the night and no one seeing me and, knocking me off my bike. So again, back to safety, I, was wearing high vis clothes, had those vest things on, had a car behind me, and I just ride as long as I could. So I'd finished the bike ride at, I think it was rode about 200 kilometers on the first night, and I was really, really happy with that. That was a really good distance to be able to cover, and I was pretty tired by that point, because I'd only stopped, and that's right. I'd laid down for about 90 minutes, but I hadn't actually slept that much. So it was pretty good, and my crew were pretty exhausted, the poor things as well. So I'd stopped, and then the plan was always to go to bed and sleep at about, like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, something around that time. So then I'd be able to get up with the sun. And that way, then, you're almost using that, psychology with your brain, where you are pretending like, you've had a lot more sleep than you have, because then it's suddenly you go to sleep when it's nighttime, you wake up when it's day, and you're like, oh, okay, I'm all good now. So then able to get back on the bike again. And the bike ride was amazing. I absolutely loved riding, like, all through these different countrysides. These are places I've never been before. I may never go back to some of these places. And it was just absolutely beautiful, like riding through this desert, riding through these amazing canyons, like the changing landscape as I was going through was just something else. So I really, really enjoyed the bike ride. There was one particular time, I can never remember what day was what on the bike ride, because it all just feels like it merges into one big long day. It just has infinite sleep breaks. But I'm very much aware when I ride, I don't actually physically show how I'm feeling. So I have to tell my team, I have to really communicate clearly, because, I don't, like, my head doesn't start to droop, my cadence doesn't drop, I've gotten rid of all my telltale signs that I'm really starting to struggle. And so I remember at one stage I stopped, and I told one of my crew members, and I just said, look, I'm not feeling that great at the moment. I always find if my mood starts to change, if I'm starting to feel really grumpy, really angry or something, I'll always try and eat something, because it's, generally always that I'm in a calorie deficit, that I, need to have some sustenance. And I was eating things, and I was, still thinking, I'm like, no, something's not right. And then I started to see some spots in front of my eyes, and I went, I'm really tired. I need to stop. So I said to her, I was like, can you please find somewhere to stop, on the side of the road, as long as there's enough shoulder, whatever's safe, because I, in the next like 5Ks or so, because I'm not okay right now. And she was like, oh, okay. Yep. No worries. Yeah. So I ended up stopping to sleep then. But yeah, I really am very, very clear with my crew beforehand that they have the ability to be able to stop me if they think that I'm not okay. And also I will tell them if I'm not okay. Like, we have this two-way communication the whole time. And I mean, that's even to the point if, there's something that's incredibly dangerous that's going on, or, if I'm not in a right state to be able to physically continue and then actually need to pull me out of the race, then they make that decision. Because if it's at that point, I'm not going to be able to make that decision. And I am not the kind of person who will make that decision. So I put a lot of trust in my crew that they're going to be there for me. They're going to, be able to do whatever's required and be able to help in, whatever way is required. But also, I'm able to communicate with them at the same time.
Right. Okay. So then how long did you sleep for when you were like, okay, now I need to sleep?
Oh, it was generally about 2 hours, 2-3 hours.
So
max.
another 2-3 hours. Okay.
No.
So,
It wasn't an 8-hour rest.
Yeah. Wow. So then going in, so you complete the bike ride. Now going in, you arrive at the Badwater Basin, right? Which is the lowest point in North America in the middle of Death Valley. How much sleep have you had up until that point total, do you think? Do you know?
Oh geez, we did work this out. I think it was maybe about like 10 or 12 hours but like we calculated on how much time I had stopped, because when you stop, I get out of my bike kit every single time that I stopped, and I had, I think it was maybe like 4 or 5 different kits that I could change into, because I didn't know how many times I was going to be stopping. But I'd never wanted to put the same pair of clothes back on again. I always wanted to have a fresh kit to, be able to manage with hygiene and, other issues that you can have when you're a cyclist as well, of chafing and saddle sores and things. So I'd always take my clothes off, especially my Nicks, put my pajamas on. I'd have, time to eat and, time in my Normatec boots, and then I would stop and sleep. So yeah, I don't think it would have been that amount of time. I honestly don't know. My memory is really patchy in terms of like what day was what, how much I slept, how much I stopped. We worked out roughly I had about 30 hours of stopping time over the 5 and a bit days. So yeah, I'm not sure about the exact breakdown on that.
Yeah, no, I think that's still ridiculous either way. But okay, so now you arrive and it's time. You've done all of this, traversed 421 miles. Not sure how many kilometers that is. But now it's time to do the part that you're weakest at. So now, and also what month is this in? I'm blanking right now. What month of the year is this in?
October. So when the Badwater Ultramarathons run, it's in July, I think June, July, and the temperatures can get, 100, 110 degrees through Badwater, through, all the desert section. But in October, it was probably around mid-90s. So it wasn't ridiculous, but it was still incredibly hot.
Still hot. That's right. And you said Right. So now, like I said, you're going into the part that you're weakest at. So now where is your mind at as you're going to start the Badwater 135, which people start, not a lot of people finish, but to be there is ridiculous in the first place. So now you have this huge challenge ahead of you. I don't know if that's how you looked at it, but what was your mentality going into that last 135 miles and now is running?
So because this race didn't have a cutoff, I was like, all right, well, cool. This is the next section. So I don't ever look at things in the entirety, because then it's going to freak me out, to be honest.
Yeah, of course.
Some things I do kind of, I like to have a little, laugh or giggle at or something. I'll look at my Garmin and I've run, 2 kilometers or whatever, and I'm like, I only have 215 Ks to go. Right. Easy. Just, have a laugh to myself, just because of how ridiculous that is. I freely admit that is ridiculous. It was actually quite interesting, because I'd realized I'd put in so much time and effort, working on my run, getting to the run. And then because every time I'm on the run in any events, I love to have a crew member with me. I love to have a pacer, because, the whole swim, the bike, I'm not really talking to people. I'm not really, like doing a lot of anything like that. And I'm a very sociable person. So I love having someone next to me, for safety, because I'm so fatigued, but also just to chat to, just to say, how's this been for you? Tell me some stories about what you've been up to, because obviously there's always, really fun crew stories that they tell as well. So that was really fun. But the first crew member that I had, one of my friends, he's done a bunch of, ultra runs, like 200 plus Ks. And I said to him, I was like, I actually realized that I don't know how to run this. Like, what should my approach be? Like, I don't actually know, because in my, I had plan A, B, C, D. It's, like go as long as you can, you know, like go and stop every, you know, 24 hours, stop every 12 hours, stop when you need to, you know, whatever. I'd kind of had all that planned out. But I said to him, I was like, I don't know what to do. And he said to me, because I started the run at night time as well, started about 9 o'clock at night, because I wanted to do as much running as possible in the night to try and avoid the really, really hot parts of the day in the afternoons. Okay. And he said to me, he said, you know, run as much as you want, walk more than you're running, you know, anytime that you want to, and sleep more, like sleep for longer periods of time because of how fatigued you are, and also how much you're going to build up fatigue extra as well, because, you know, the running is where you're really going to feel it, because, you know, all the excessive pounding on the pavement and all of these things. So that was absolute gold advice. And I was like, okay, no worries. I trust you. That's what I'll do. So I just split the run up into chunks and just, you know, ran as long as I could and then slept. And then there was always that period from about 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon that I'd be in the RV with the air conditioning on, trying to really cool down and sleep. And then I'd get back out about, you know, 5, 6 o'clock at night and then try and run as much as I could or walk as much as I could through the night.
So what was the impact like on your knees, your hips? Because I'll give you an example. I did 35 miles like 2 weeks ago, and my knees were killing me because I'm all surrounded by pavement, and similar to Badwater, just pavement. So what was the toll like on your specifically lower half of your body from all of that constant pounding, like you just alluded to, during the run?
I think because I walked a decent chunk of it, I didn't actually have that much, you know, issues with my knees. And also I think because I've been doing like running for so long, like my knees are actually pretty good now. I found the difference between this one and Epic 5, because I can correlate the bike and run portions are relatively the same, but they're just broken up differently. And so I found like running every day in Epic 5 really beat me up. Whereas, you know, having all of the swim, all of the bike and all the run was very different. And my legs and feet didn't actually start to swell, which is very, very normal for me until they got to the run, because I thought they'd start swelling on the bike because I did an Epic 5, but that was because of the repetitive running every day.
All right.
So I had taken along 3 pairs of shoes to plan for that. So I had, because also shoe fatigue over something of this distance as well, you have to be very, very mindful of. So I had 2 pairs that were the same size and then 1 pair of shoes that was a size bigger, because I know that my feet swell over, you know, experience, my feet swell sideways first and then they swell lengthways. So I found, you know, my knees were fine. Obviously, you know, my legs were fatigued, but it was mostly my feet that I was quite worried about, and also blisters as well. So anytime I started to get any hot spots, would be onto it straight away with a blister patch. And I ended up just keeping the same pair of socks on for the last couple of times that I stopped, which was pretty gross by the end. But that also meant the blister patches that we kept putting on, they weren't getting pulled off every time I take my socks off and on. So that was really good. And yeah, like, you know, just based on past experience, when my feet start to swell, my little toes get jammed in and then they end up like being blistered and horrible. So my husband just cuts the side walls of my shoes so my toes can spread out, and then they, you know, then they're fine. And then when my feet started to hit the end of my shoes continuously, I was like, okay, let's go up a size. And then they were fine again. So I had no blisters, which is amazing for me. And yeah, like overall my legs actually pulled up pretty well each time that I'd rest. And I think using the Normatec boots, using the compression recovery boots really helped with that as well, because just having kind of that extra little bit of recovery, because I wasn't stretching, I wasn't rolling, I wasn't doing any of my usual body maintenance, because that all eats up into your sleeping time. So you know, just having the boots on every time that I stopped, I think that was probably the best thing that I could have done in terms of like body maintenance work. And then, because I mean, there's 3 big climbs in the Badwater. So I just walked all of them, like any hill, anything whatsoever. I just walk it, because again, you know, it's all about conservative and like management of your energy. And I also wasn't pushing for a time. So it didn't matter how long that I took, because the Badwater cutoff is 48 hours. And I was like, well, I'm not going to do that, and I don't need to, and I don't care. Right, so I'm just going to take as long as I do to get through this. And I actually managed to I was pure luck, managed to finish in daylight, which is something that I really wanted to do because I've seen so many beautiful pictures of Mount Whitney and, what the climb's like and what the finish all looks like. But, I'd never been there. So I really, really wanted to finish in daylight so I could just take it all in. I ended up finishing at about 2:00 in the afternoon.
Oh,
so it was,
can't get better than that.
Yeah, it was perfect. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
So that's amazing. That is really amazing. So was hallucination one of the biggest problems that you faced during that portion of the race?
Yeah, I mean, I've had hallucinations before when I've been running and racing, and it doesn't really freak me out because I know exactly what's going on. So it wasn't a big deal. It was more just the way that fatigue was taking a massive toll on my body and how my body was responding to that. Like that was it. I wouldn't call it an issue. It was just really interesting and kind of random and a bit freaky at times because I'd literally be, like walking along or running along and then my leg would just step sideways and I would have no control over whatsoever. Thankfully, I didn't fall over. But yeah, that was a very late sign. And then, I'd get up to the RV and my legs would just go to jelly. And my husband would be, right there, just like grab onto me and be like, okay, you're stopping to sleep now. And I'm like, okay, yeah, no worries. So
because you didn't want to stop at certain points. Like you said, your crew had to be there to assist you as well because you're like, I just want to keep going to certain points.
Yeah.
Sometimes
I mean,
they knew what was best for you.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I did know as well. Sometimes I was like, okay, my body's telling me to stop. I need to listen because otherwise I will fall over.
Right. Wow.
Yeah.
So, okay. Then you've completed the race. And now what awaits you at the finish line? Is there like a massive crowd or like what is there at the end of at the Badwater, at Mount Whitney at the end of this massive 6-day adventure that you have done? What's awaiting you? Because for me, it was like, I would think that there would be like rockets flying and wow, you just did this. But what was the reality behind what awaited you at the finish line?
So all of my crew were there except for a couple that had to leave early. So that was amazing. And then I had just a few random people who were walkers and hikers and, other people who were around, that had seen me either coming up or, just finish their hike and be like, oh, what's going on here? And, just hung around and, and that was it. And that was perfect. Like
that's all you wanted.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because like, it's funny. Some people say, I remember one guy who I was talking to about it. He was saying, so is it like an Ironman finish with, like there's lots of people around? And I was like, that would be the worst. I would not be able to handle that after being in such close confinement with such a small group of people for so long. Like it would be so overwhelming to have hundreds of people around and be like,
what the hell's going on here?
Yeah. So no, I mean all the most important, most of the most important people, were there, and that was amazing.
Wow, that's amazing. So then, if you had I'm sure you've been asked this question so many times, but what did you really learn from that experience? Because, like you said, or what was different about that experience than your prior, Epic 5, or obviously, the distance is different, but what did you really take away from this entire experience? Because the reason why I want to dive into such depth for everyone listening about the specific chunks is that it's so incredible, but you like we went back to, you're just a regular person that was able to do something extraordinary. So what did you really take away from the Uberman? And now you're dubbed the Uberwoman, which is so cool. Good for you, Mel. You earned that. But what did you really learn from this experience?
Yeah, one of the biggest takeaways that I have from it is that because I never really felt like I belonged in the endurance world. Like I always had this, kind of imposter feeling where, like everyone just kind of looks at you and go, who do you think you are? Like, why are you even here? You don't even look like an athlete. And that's, one of my hang-ups that I still have, but a work in progress. But it was interesting because before Uberman started, we had, a meet and greet with there was 2 other guys doing the event and their crews and everybody. And I remember walking into that, the restaurant, and I had this feeling of, you actually belong here. And I've never had that feeling before. And that hasn't gone away. So that's probably one of the biggest things that I still am holding on to, and just absolutely love that feeling of, yes, you are actually one of the people who belong in this group of, ultra endurance athletes. And, I feel like I can call myself that and not cringe and not be like, oh, is that really me? Do I really feel that? Is that, something that, suits me? Am I, big nerding myself or, whatever too much? So I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I've really learned about myself through this whole thing. And also that, I can set these ridiculously massive goals and achieve them. Like that's pretty amazing. Like it takes me time, it takes me months to really think about and get my head around, yes, you actually did this. Like it's a really, really strange experience, but yeah.
So then how does it look to feel back and know, and I would assume that there's more that you want to do in the future in this world, but how does it feel to look back now and be like, wow, I did that? I can't even wrap my head around it. So what does it feel like for you?
It just feels amazing. Like I find myself sometimes just thinking about it and I just smile, and I was just like, wow, that's incredible. And I don't take this as a solo achievement. It is like 100% my crew all were there with me, every step of the way. And I would not be able to be successful at all without those people around me, because it's, it's a team effort. It's not something that I've done. It's something that we've done as a team all together. And, the friendships that I've formed through that have, are lifelong, because I didn't really know some of the people beforehand. Like I'd met them once or twice and they're like, hey, I'll come along with you and, to the middle of nowhere and do this. It's absolutely amazing. So yeah, it's just so, I don't know. It's just this beautiful feeling that I have that I don't really feel like I can describe adequately.
No, I could visually, for those of you that are going to watch on YouTube, we see it like in your eyes, like the appreciation that you have for having the opportunity to have done something like this.
Yeah.
I could really see it. And there's two last points I want to discuss with you before you go. And number one is that before the show started, we were talking a little bit about limitations, and you're a big advocate of the view that the only limitations are those that we impose on ourselves. Can you touch a little bit on that? Because I think that's something that can resonate with so many people.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a lot of people coming up to me and saying, oh, I could never do what you do. Like you must be, like, as we were saying before, I don't really have a solid sporting base through my childhood, through my whole life. And I always say to people, I was like, of course you could. It's just, for me, I also don't say I don't have time. I always say I don't make time. So it's like, you obviously have other priorities in your life that you're making time for, and that is totally fine. Like, absolutely respect that. But for me, I wanted to do it and I made it happen, and I made time to be able to train and was able to do this. And I don't see myself as being any special person that, only I can do it. Like, I think there is thousands of people out there can do it, but obviously, like financially, you have to be able to, put aside the time commitment and, money to be able to afford to do something like this. But if that is available to you, then I don't see why not. So I don't see why, people can't also do this. It's just more about having the drive and the motivation to do it. And the other part that I don't really like people doing is kind of downplaying their achievements in comparison to me. So people who say, oh, but I only did this, and, that's not as amazing as what you did, and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, stop. I always pull people up on that. And I was like, don't say only, don't say just, say I did, and I'm amazing for doing this. And that's, that's probably, if people don't take anything else away from this except for that, like, please, please start using that in sentences. But I truly believe that, that anyone physically, mentally would be able to do this. It's just, as I said, the limitations of what you place on yourself. And if you really want to do it, then you'll make it happen.
I think that was so cool what you just said, because I was listening to a different podcast and someone had said that, and it was actually the Iron Cowboy. He's one of his big things. He was talking about the fact that it's not fair for us to compare our journey to somebody else's journey. So Mel, your journey, you're at a different place on your journey than someone maybe I am. And for me to compare where I am to you, I'm essentially just going to set myself up to not feel adequate, because here I am, I've run an ultra marathon where you did an ultra marathon, a 21-mile swim, and then a bike ride. And here I am, oh man, I feel like crap. But like what you said is just appreciate where you are on your journey and know that you're making progress, because like everything that I've been hearing from you is that you've just been making consistent and persistent progress in your life. And now it seems that as you continue, you've also increased the amount of happiness that's in your life as well, I would assume. Because you just know that now I discovered this other level of me. I didn't know that existed maybe. And I think that's so fascinating. And I think that's so cool. And I really appreciate you saying that. And then the second to last question that I have for you is, there's a good fable, and I think I might be pronouncing it wrong, but the Fable of Aesop's. It comes from Stoicism in the philosophy world, but it goes like this. And when you were talking, I couldn't help but to think that it related to you, but also really other mentally strong people. And it goes something like this. So there's a boar in the woods, and there's nothing around the boar. But then a fox comes and he sees the boar, and the boar is sharpening his tusks against a tree. And then the fox goes, "Boar, why are you sharpening your tusks? There's no danger anywhere near you." And the boar goes, and I love the response. He says, "There's not any danger near me now, but when danger does come, I'll have no time then to sharpen my tusks." And I think that is such a great analogy for why we should practice intentionally putting ourselves in positions of discomfort. Because when we need to utilize our mental toughness, I hope no one experiences it, but suddenly losing somebody or having to push through a really hard physical event that maybe you don't even have the choice to go through. Like myself, I'm going to have to do stuff in the future where you don't have a choice to do this. You have to stay the course. But if I think that I'm just going to build mental resiliency in those times, I'm just going to fail. So I think that like what you're doing, you're constantly throwing yourself, and you're like the boar sharpening your tusks, and you're constantly doing mentally challenging and physically challenging things that you're saying, okay, I'm willing to accept that I will be uncomfortable for the next 6 days. How do you get to that point? And is it cognizant that you are like, okay, I'm intentionally placing myself in this period of discomfort to discover who I am? Like, is that ever are you ever cognizantly thinking like that? Because I think that is, for me personally, blows my mind. And I think that so many more people could achieve much more if they went into a little bit more discomfort.
Yes, absolutely. I work on my mental strength all the time. I really pushed my comfort zone. I really pushed myself out of my comfort zone a lot. And like really, really think about that, think about getting comfortable being uncomfortable. So I'm incredibly determined. I'm incredibly stubborn. So when I'm doing a training session and nothing's, it's not going right, I'm feeling horrible, I'm feeling like all I want to do is just pack up and go home. That's when, I really start going, use this time to really dig in mentally for, like what are you going to do if this is during the race? Like what strategies is going to use? Like, do you have any? And start developing them during training. And I've said to my coach before that, because she said to me once, like I'm one of the most mentally tough person that she's ever met before. And I said, well, that's not by accident. Like that's something that I work on. Like, what, like that bear, like I don't focus. I don't think that it's going to be there when I want it, because it might not be if I haven't built it. So for me, I think that working on your mental strength is as important as working on your physical strength. Like, the two are intertwined. You can't train one without training the other, for me. And I specifically say to myself, you know, when my coach says, okay, we're going to start the training block for this particular race that I have coming up. And I say to myself, okay, this is when my mental strength training for this event specifically is going to start as well. And so if I have a really bad training session where I'm like, well, that was horrible, I felt horrible, I didn't enjoy that, whatever, I say to myself, I'm like, that is fantastic. Use that, figure out what you did to then get through that and not quit, and remember that, and then use that in the future. So I have this thing where I say, you know, celebrate your bad sessions, because a lot of people like, that was horrible, I don't ever want to think about that again, just put it, you know, lock it away. Whereas I'm like, no, think about it, analyze it. What did you do? What didn't you do? What can you do differently? What can you do, you know, the same? What can you repeat? And yeah, I have a lot of mantras that I use as well, you know, depending on what the situation is, that I can draw on, different circumstances that I can say to myself, well, you got through that session, you'll be able to get through this. And yeah, I embrace suffering, embrace pain. I love trying to push my brain to levels that I am not sure that I'll be able to, you know, kind of succeed and, you know, persist and get through, and then say to myself, well, what have you got? You know, let's do this. Let's challenge. Yeah.
So
and I think you'll find that too.
Crazy, Mel. And I really appreciate you sharing that. And so is that like the bulk of your like mental resiliency training? Is that part of, you know, really embracing those bad moments, or is there anything more to it? I don't want all your secrets, Mel, because I can't, you know, I know you don't want to give away all them secrets, but I'm only busting chops. But is there anything else that you do to prepare yourself mentally?
I was about to say 5 things at once then. I am an open book. I don't have secrets. I feel like I have the responsibility and the duty to be able to help other people succeed.
I love it.
So I'm not going to be the keeper of secrets and say, well, I'm not going to tell you what I do. You have to figure it out yourself. I don't believe in that at all. I think that's ridiculous. So my other thing that I would really say to people is develop a really strong why. So, you know, people always say, you know, find your why. And I mean, that can be something like really small, really trivial, really whatever. But if it keeps you motivated, then use it. It can be a positive thing. It can be a negative thing. Like some people race in anger. Some people, you know, like make up stories in their mind about, you know, how these people have been talking trash about them and they need to go and prove it, even if it's not necessarily true, because that motivates them to keep moving. Whereas, you know, my different races that I do have had different reasons why I'm out there, but it needs to be something solid and strong enough that when you are, you know, not feeling like you're feeling like absolute trash. You know, I've been through races where I vomited for 4 hours and continued on. And, you know, when really I should have gone to hospital and I didn't, and I just kept pushing through, and it's not always the best thing to do. But my why was strong enough that I kept going, and I finished that event. And then, you know, like afterwards I didn't
and then went to the hospital.
And then I did that. But also, you know, then I don't have any regrets about, you know, about finishing it. So and sometimes, I mean, there was one particular race I did, Ultraman Hawaii, where I didn't make the bike cutoff, and I was doing the run on the 3rd day, and I was saying to myself, I'm like, why are you still out here? I didn't know, because there was going to be no change to what the outcome was going to be. Like, I was going to be a participant. I wasn't an official finisher. I wasn't going to have an official time of finishing. So I said to myself,
out there. Wow.
Yeah, exactly. And I said to myself, why are you still out here? And I didn't have a reason, because like my why completely changed by that time. But I had enough nous and enough ability to be able to say to myself, until you figure out why you're still here, you're not allowed to quit. Until you can come up with a good enough reason that you will be satisfied with waking up tomorrow knowing you didn't finish this section of the race, you know, didn't finish the run, then you're not allowed to quit. And it took me a good couple of hours of still running and still, you know, vomiting and feeling horrible, to figure out why I was still there. So yeah, I guess if you're starting to think about quitting and thinking about finishing, give yourself some time, have something to eat, and think about what is a good enough reason that you'll be satisfied with. And if you can't think of one, then there's your answer.
Wow, that was powerful, Mel. Thank you. And last thing, when your day comes, and I hope it's not for a long time, as I tell all the guests, but you're no longer here, and you have to look down from heaven, in my case, or wherever it is that you believe you're going to go. What is the legacy and the impact that you really hope to leave behind for others?
I would love people to remember me as somebody who was always able to rise to a challenge and to be able to, set incredible goals and then achieve them, but then also, be the kind of person that was supportive and encouraging of others. And, as I said before, and an open book. So, if anyone comes to me with questions, I will happily answer whatever questions you have. Nothing is off limits. Nothing's too personal. So I feel like I want to really be that supportive, encouraging person, but also the person that, people look to and go, wow, if you can do it, then I can do it.
Well, Mel, I think that you've definitely, and I can't say think, I know you have shown that support to me by even coming on here and joining us, and all my guests that are going to watch this. I know a lot of my friends and a lot of people I know are super excited about this when I told them I'm having you. After I told them, I said, just look up Uberman and then give me a text back. And they said, what? So, and then I was like, yeah, she did that, and she's going to be kind enough to join us. And I really appreciate you taking us through your journey from really start to finish. We went through it, and then your mentality behind it. And it's really just so fascinating. And here we have it, folks, the Uberwoman, the one and only Mel Urie. Thank you so much for being here. And for all, Mel, like I said, really, I want to give you a chance to say a last word, but I can't express the amount of gratitude that I have for you really being here. And like you said, being such an open book and telling us how you got to where you are, because you're not natural. And that's something I try to stress to other people, that you're not naturally gifted. You're not an Olympic athlete. Weren't a star in high school. And to see where you are now is really inspiring to me. And I know a lot of other people, Mel. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Oh my God. I've really, really loved talking to you as well. And I can feel your passion and enthusiasm and everything. So I have nothing but best wishes for you in your career, as well as your sporting life. And
thank you guys so much for listening to yet another episode of the One Life podcast. I hope that you were able to take one or two of these ideas that we discussed today and are able to implement them in your life to make you more successful in whatever it is that you're chasing. Remember, only one life to live, no time to wait. Act now. See you guys on the next episode of the One Life podcast.